Hello, my name is Shane Brody. I'm traveling around the country interviewing fellow trans people about their beliefs, their identity, etc. I am a trans person. I transitioned over 20 years ago. And I just want to travel around the country, meet people, look at the landscape. Just have some fun. I've eaten quite a bit of barbecue as well, which has been great. The best is in North Carolina, by the way. Let's see. So I'm here by the seaside in New England, and I have a guest today, and she's going to introduce herself in whatever way she feels comfortable. Go ahead.
Hi. My first name is Ann, but everybody calls me Doc. We're in the restaurant I work at in Rye, New Hampshire, and it's nice to be here.
All right. So did you grow up here?
I didn't. I grew up in Seattle, Washington.
Oh, okay. Well, that's very different.
Yeah. Well, you know what? It's not so different. I mean, the weather's a lot different.
Yeah.
But growing up in Seattle versus being here, there's a lot of similarities. I mean, seaside towns tend to have some common threads.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, but this is a really small town, and Seattle's. It's grown a lot, but it's a pretty big city. So how do you think it's the same?
The whole aquaculture. I find that the more coastal cities are, the more they pay attention to environmental concerns.
Oh, you think? Okay.
I generally see that, especially in smaller areas. I mean, when I grew up in Seattle, it was still green and growing. Mm-hmm. And out here it's never going to stop. It's been growing for 200 years.
Yeah. Well, it's kind of worn in a little bit. Mm-hmm. When I drove up, we talked a little bit, just very, very briefly, and I asked if this was a resort area, and what was your answer?
It's not. It's a wealthy area.
Yeah, and my reply was, well, what did I say? I forget.
Resident resort.
Yeah, resident resort. So wealthy people just live here, and this is like their vacation, just living here. And it is like that. It's really beautiful. It's right on the water.
It is. I mean, you can hit it with a rock if you got a good arm.
I didn't realize that when I was driving here. I just kind of put things in Google, and then it just leads me wherever. Sometimes it leads me astray, though. Google, get better at that. Anyway, so. Yeah, what is this town like anyway? Is it a harbor? Is it a fishing port? Like, I'm thinking historically.
Rye, not so much. Most of the big port stuff happened a little north in Portsmouth.
Yeah. There's
I really
a big
don't
naval
know
station.
much about Rye's history.
There's a big naval station there too. Yeah.
Across the river in Kittery, the Portsmouth Naval. They call it the Portsmouth Naval Shipyard, even though it's in Kittery.
Yeah, I noticed that the state line kind of snaked around it. I was like, oh, that's so weird.
It has something to do with the size of the city.
Okay.
It's closest to the shipyard.
Okay. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
But that's got a rich history. This whole area is just dredged in history.
Yeah.
It's amazing.
Yeah, I was telling somebody a couple of interviews ago that it's almost like I can imagine, like, jumping off a pirate ship or like riding a horse through some of these very narrow streets or something, and everything's so old. And a lot of it is really well taken care of, too. Like, I've been to some cities here on the East Coast that are very old, but they're a little bit weathered.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
The historical society around here they're very active.
Yeah.
And it's funny you mentioned pirate ship. Right down in Prescott Park, which is right across from the shipyard. That used to be the general area where a lot of ships coming up the river would harbor.
Yeah, I was just a few feet from that when I was saying that, actually.
It was, that whole area then was basically bars and bordellos.
Yeah.
And now it's kind of funny because the city tries to have this lily white, aren't we pretty and nice and quaint atmosphere. And at the same time, they forget what built us.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, even since I first came here in '86, this town has changed, and it wasn't dirty then, but there were a few spots that most of the locals didn't go too much.
Yeah.
But a lot of us knew about them and went anyway.
Are there a lot of Massachusetts and New York transplants here?
Definitely Massachusetts, although they tend to be very state pride and stay home and just visit.
Yeah.
I do see a lot of New Yorkers up here. But I don't know. I feel like everybody around here is really accepting. They accepted me, and I moved here.
Did you notice any influx with COVID, perhaps?
I didn't really,
No.
because I was locked up like everybody else.
Okay.
So
Okay.
I
Yeah.
didn't get out much.
You know, even in Fairbanks, where I was living, Fairbanks, Alaska, which is in the interior of Alaska, actually, I met people from New York who were extremely wealthy, who were just traveling around.
Wow.
Yeah. It was really strange because at that time, it was during kind of the lockdown period, but I don't know. I guess if you have enough money, you can do what you want.
Pretty much.
Yeah. I thought it was a little bit, I don't know, selfish in a way, because there were people who were coming up and trying to go to villages, yeah, which were completely closed.
Right.
Yeah, and for good reason, because in the last pandemic, you know, the Spanish flu, there were whole villages that were wiped out, and, you know, so the villages took it really seriously to keep people out. And
As well they should.
Yeah, really. So it was really strange when people from the lower 48 were coming up and they're like, oh, I'm a prepper and I just, you know, want to live on the land. Well, it's not your fucking land.
Right.
You know? I mean, seriously, it was
Who
like,
invited you?
yeah, nobody wants you here. Nobody. Anyway, so getting back to identity and that sort of thing. You didn't grow up here. You grew up in Seattle. And not to totally give away your age, but what kind of era was that?
I was in Seattle before the Kingdom was finished.
Okay. All right. Yeah. Interestingly, the Kingdom, the reason why it was raised, because the people who were building it, the construction workers, they were using boots with cleats on them.
Okay.
And so they were puncturing holes into the ceiling, into the roof. And that allowed all that trickling rain that is pretty constant there to get into the materials.
Right.
And so they eventually replaced it with those billion-dollar monstrosities that they now
Those
have
tiles that came.
Well,
Didn't one of them come down during a Mariners game in like the early 90s?
yeah, there was a problem in the 90s. The roof kept collapsing a little bit, and then they would prop it up. And then they built these very modern ones where the roof comes out, and, you know, they're huge metal things. I mean, they're just like plopped into the landscape. Cost $1 billion to build them, which was really, it was wild, because at the time there was such gentrification that there were elderly people and people of color and poor people in Seattle who were just losing all of their housing. And there was like this tremendous homelessness problem that was occurring. So to put $1 billion of the city's money into these projects
That only the wealthy are going to
That
be able to attend
only-
and be a part of.
only the wealthy can go to, because those tickets cost so much. It was just really, the priority there is so strange. I always think that's interesting that these cities that are so green are so unwelcoming to people, you know?
I feel like, well, I think in Seattle that started when it must have been the late 80s when Californians were moving up there
yes.
in droves.
In droves, yes.
And
It became a thing, like, oh, where are you
send
from?
the bastards back.
Yeah, yeah.
There was Emmett Watson, I believe was his name. He was
I don't know.
editorial. He wrote an editorial for the PI, and he started this campaign about send the bastards back.
Yeah,
and
that's
there
the
were death
Post
threats.
Intelligencer, which is the local big newspaper.
And it was a thing. I mean, I never had a house key as a child. But when I moved back there, I went back in 95 and lived, or 90 and lived there till 95. Everything was very different. It was more city-like in that you needed a house key. You needed to lock up. You needed to be careful.
I actually lived in Belltown, which pretty much doesn't exist anymore. Belltown was right near the Pike Place Market.
Okay.
So it's all, you know, mostly SROs, very, very urban.
Right.
But then the whole place was razed at some point, and they put up these huge condo buildings that remained empty for many years, actually.
Because nobody can afford it.
Nobody could afford it, but also people were speculating that there was going to be growth, and they got all these tax breaks and whatnot to build all this stuff. At the same time, they're raising a neighborhood, an old neighborhood,
Right.
That was very culturally rich part of the city. It had union halls down there, merchant seaman halls. It had old bars. It had dance clubs, theaters, so many things, art galleries, and all gone. Yeah, pretty amazing.
You see that in Portsmouth too. I don't actually live in Rye, I just work here, but I live next city over in Portsmouth.
Okay.
And you see a lot of that.
Yeah.
Right just over the line into Portsmouth.
Is it gentrifying right now, or?
Has been for a long time.
Yeah.
I feel like that.
Is this like a pulse of it, though?
No, it's just kind of normal.
Okay.
Pretty much any time anything gets torn down, it's either parking spaces or condos.
Okay.
And then if a store closes downtown, it's usually replaced by art, jewelry, clothes that nobody who lives here can afford.
Okay.
And we draw a lot of tourist crowds.
Kind of boutique.
Very boutique-y
So
downtown.
it's not really places that help out the local community, but more the transient, wealthy community.
I mean, when you say it like that, it doesn't sound as accurate, only because it helps out the local community. It gives us jobs.
A handful.
A decent amount. There's
Really?
a lot of places downtown that I bet if you told the employees who work downtown in retail and restaurant, it's got to be close to 10,000.
Yeah. Do you think that those places would survive if they catered more to the local population?
I think they'd survive even better.
Okay.
They'd more than survive. They'd thrive.
Okay. So they would survive. They would thrive. So those jobs would still be there. Mm-hmm. Okay. Yeah.
It's a hard line.
Yeah.
I mean, there are definitely businesses downtown that are local, were built local, and will stay local.
Well, it seems like it. Yeah.
There's some great places down there. Some good people.
It's I gotta say, it's one of the cutest downtowns I've ever seen ever. I mean, really, it's like these narrow little tracks that kind of wind around each other, and there's like little tiny hills, and the road will go like this over it.
Yeah.
And only somebody walking or on a horse is really gonna do well on that. Your car is like, oh my goodness, you're gonna bottom out, and it's definitely not not modern. It's like stepping back a couple hundred years.
That's why they have Strawberry Bank.
What's that?
It's a historical museum.
Okay.
They moved older houses onto the land.
Oh, okay.
And it's probably 4 or 5 acres.
Okay.
And it's old buildings and displays and exhibits. And I haven't been there in a long time, but they used to have, like, in the blacksmith shop, there was a guy who built barrels with staves. And
Oh, okay. Kind of like
scratch kind of stuff.
Williamsburg kind of feel to it.
I guess so. I've never been, but I get the idea.
Either. I've never been either. Actually, Fairbanks, Alaska, where I was just living, has something like that, and it's a little bit cheesy, but it does preserve some of the local history. They moved some isolated cabins to a central part of Fairbanks, and they said who lived in it and that sort of thing. And I was surprised how small these cabins were, though. They were really quite tiny, and I will say that as somebody who lived in a really tiny cabin. It was 12 by 12, and I had a little loft above it, and it used to be actually a horse barn. Yeah, but it was really quite nice. I mean, the walls were super thick, but I mean, these little cabins that they moved to, they call it, I think, Alaska Land or Pioneer Park or something. Mm-hmm. It's kind of a little tourist trap. Oh, somebody's here. Hi.
Hey.
It's okay. We're going to be here for about an hour doing
okay?
the interview. Yeah.
It's one of our staff.
We had somebody walk in
Yes.
on this closed restaurant where we're at. I'm so glad to be indoors, by the way. My last few interviews have been outdoors, and they've been a real challenge to do them because of wind, sun, crazy bug action, like hornets like buzzing around and making like some weird insects making some really loud noise. But anyway, so back to identity. How do you identify exactly?
I identify as female.
Okay. And do you have like a transgender identity, or you just identify as female?
No,
like
I
would
just identify as female.
Okay. Like I would say I'm a transsexual man. It depends on who I'm with, though. Like I don't always tell people that I'm a trans person. So when, I guess, did you start like transitioning and that sort of thing?
I mean, I guess technically when I was really like in the 10 to 12 range.
Okay.
I mean, I knew something was different.
Remember, just speak up.
But I didn't know what was different or how to deal with it or anything.
Yeah.
My household was pretty conservative. I was told when I was going to see the Rocky Horror Picture Show that we should feel sorry for those people.
Oh.
Because it's a sickness, it's a disease. We
Okay.
should pity them,
Okay.
not laugh at them, which proves he didn't get it.
Yeah.
So, there was no acceptance there and no attempt for it. It wasn't a happy childhood. There was a lot of bad stuff going on. Then I just spent the next 30 years or so overcompensating.
Okay. Was that in the Seattle area, by the way?
It started there.
Okay. Did you ever hear about any organizations there, or meet any other trans people, or
Oh, no.
maybe people in the greater LGBT community?
No.
No.
There were no gay people.
Okay.
Gay people were in San Francisco and on television.
Okay.
Lesbians were in Penthouse and Hustler magazine.
Okay.
And trans people were just on TV and in Las Vegas shows. None
Okay.
of these things didn't exist in reality, not in Bellevue, Washington, anyway.
Oh, Bellevue. Okay, yeah. That's
So-
that's a wealthy suburb of the greater Seattle area. It's like beyond you have to go on some bridges to get to it.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's very, very suburban.
So, none of those things existed. They weren't real. It was all on TV and in the media, which was newspapers.
What area was this?
Bellevue. I lived in Newport Hills.
What time period?
Oh,
are we talking about like the 70s?
We moved there in 76-ish.
Okay.
And I left in 84.
Okay, all right. Yeah, I moved there in 90, and I went to a gay pride, and
Oh, sure. Very different.
yeah,
by
it was
then.
very different by then, yeah. Of course, in between 84 and 90, we also have the peak of the AIDS crisis.
A lot of growing pains.
Yeah, and a lot of people died, and it also actually formed the greater community, because people had to help each other out. A lot of lesbians, for instance, were helping gay men who were ill or in hospice. And then bisexual and trans people were making more noise then, trying to be recognized as being part of the community in a political sense.
Sure.
Yeah. It took a long time for that to happen, though.
I was really ignorant of all of it.
Really?
I mean, that overcompensation went right through high school, extended into joining the military out of high school,
Okay.
getting out of the military, and almost within 2 years married, having a child.
Is that when you moved out here?
I moved up here. I was in the military in South Carolina.
Okay.
And I moved up here after I left, and that's where I met the woman who became my wife, and we had
Okay.
a child. Went back to Seattle. Marriage fell apart. I came back out here to heal up, and I haven't left yet.
Okay.
I mean, it's been almost 30 years. I think
Yeah.
this is home now.
Yeah, well, this is a really lovely area. I can see why.
I have a lot here beyond just. I've got great friends who I've had for over 20 years.
Yeah.
I have roots here now, and
Yeah.
I've never had roots ever before.
So when, I guess, did you start taking some sort of action toward coming out as a trans person?
A couple years
Or
ago.
at least to yourself?
Literally a couple years ago.
Okay.
I found myself out of relation. I wasn't in a relationship, and
When, since it was so recent, because we have had the internet for a while now and a lot of information out there about trans people, were you looking online for that sort of thing beforehand? Or?
not in a sense of transitioning.
Okay, just curiosity.
Yeah, more like that.
Okay,
But I found myself not in a relationship, and I thought, well, you've always wanted this. It's okay now. Why not?
Okay.
What's stopping you?
Okay.
And so
when you say you've always wanted this,
I've always wanted to be a woman.
Okay.
I just didn't know how to express it, and early on I was told it was a disease, it was an illness, so I hid it and repressed it.
Okay. Okay.
I'm the same person I always was.
Yeah.
I just have better clothing selection now.
Okay. Okay.
I tell people I was a miserable, ugly dude, and I might be a miserable, ugly woman, but I'll have better shoes.
Okay. All right.
I don't think I'm going to get much prettier than I am now, and so that's how that is. Mm-hmm. But I'm happier. I'm much happier.
Okay. What makes you happy exactly?
Being able to express myself for who I am, not hiding things that might tip off that I'm different.
Okay.
Now I acknowledge it fully and freely, and I'm proud of it. And it's not about being in anybody's face about it. Mm-hmm. It's just being accepted for who I am. Mm-hmm. And my peers, my friends, my coworkers all do that.
Yeah,
exactly
that's great. That's great. You're very fortunate.
I am.
You're very fortunate because other people don't quite have that. When some people come out and they're just fired, they're kicked out of their homes, out of their apartments, whatever. Their relationships end. Mm-hmm. Yeah, so you're very fortunate. That may be why a lot of people do have to be in other people's faces.
Absolutely. I'm a member of a couple different support groups.
Oh, really? Oh, yeah.
May I mention any of the names?
Yeah, absolutely.
Renaissance, New Hampshire is actually how... It's hard to explain. I saw two people in a bar one night. I was having a drink after work. And...
Locally here?
in Portsmouth.
Okay.
And I looked at them and I'm like, they're like I want to be. So I sent a couple drinks over and walked over and finally introduced myself and without... I went way out of the way to not be offensive, but I ended up sounding like a stammering high school kid asking a girl to dance for the first time.
Sure.
And basically what the idea I got across was, I think I'm like you and I don't know how to do that. And it turns out that they work with a group called Renaissance New Hampshire.
Yeah.
And I'm part of that group, and they've been wonderful. The other people in it have been...
How would you describe that group? Is that like a trans
supportive
group?
I would call it a trans group.
Okay.
And it's inclusive. There are trans men, there are trans women.
Okay.
There are people who haven't decided or don't want to decide.
Sure. Or non-binary.
I have a minor... I don't understand non-binary. I'm totally accepting. Be who you are. It's not my problem. It's you do you. I got your back. But I don't understand that one, and that's just my own ignorance.
Yeah. Well, there's a lot of people out in the world who don't feel or quite fit into particular neat boxes, and it is a spectrum.
Yeah.
They don't necessarily identify as trans. Some of them identify as being cisgendered. Some identify as being non-binary. Yeah.
And I mean, I understand the definition. I don't understand it here. But do what you do and be happy, and I got your back.
Yeah. Sometimes people say that, and they don't have people's backs, though. They feel like there's too much of a difference between being non-binary and being trans, or they use ignorance as a way to not learn more. Yeah. Or they use this idea of strangeness in order to shun or, like I said, not learn more.
I don't get that.
Yeah,
I don't understand that either.
It's weird because here we are in a community that you would think is very liberatory, right? We're all trying to become our better selves or who we are internally.
There's a great rainbow. I can never get the letters in the right order, so I just say people under the rainbow.
It doesn't matter.
There's a good community in Portsmouth. There's a lot of people, and there's a lot of support.
Yeah, some people will in the trans community though really delineate, and they have a very narrow view of what being trans is about, and that they use their confusion or ignorance, etc., or their age as an excuse to exclude other people. And it's so weird because, I mean, trans people have generally been excluded, in various ways in our lives, or oppressed. And then to turn around and do that to other people,
I don't understand
it's just awful. It's just awful. It's perpetuating abuse.
It really
it's not
is.
working on your shit.
You've got to be able to get past your own feelings for the greater good sometimes.
Yeah. Yeah.
Beyond the people I work with and good friends, there are 3 or 4 places I go, and everybody I talk to, and all of them, staff, friends, the whole nine, they know, they're supportive.
Yeah.
On my days off, like today, I'll go in there as this, not my usual work self. It's hard to feminize a cook. I mean,
Yeah.
it's not like I can wear a skirt or makeup on the line.
Yeah. Well, I do know other trans women who are cooks. In fact, there was one that I met in Arkansas, and she does fine dining. And I don't know, she looks pretty good when she's, I think, when she's cooking.
But
she's
there
a
it is. She looks pretty good. I don't.
She's a model, in fact.
I mentioned it to a few friends who are female, and one of them, we were going out somewhere together, and I got dressed, and she said, "Oh my God, you're kind of over the top tonight." And I'm like, "Look, you look like a girl. There's no question.
Yeah.
I have to be over the top because I don't look like a woman to begin with."
Okay.
And so maybe I overcompensate a little bit there.
Yeah. Well,
I do try to keep it in check.
if something's new to you and presenting it a certain way, then it might seem like it's over the top as well. Maybe you haven't learned the subtleties yet. You know.
There's so much.
I remember when I was little, I tried, when I was a teenager and stuff, I tried to learn how to put on makeup, and I just didn't do it enough to figure it out. I would actually kind of...
Clearly, I haven't either.
I would hurt my eyes, actually, because I would borrow my mother's eyeliner, and it was like wooden, Lancome.
Oh, yeah.
Lancome, like the really high quality
Like the pencils and stuff.
Yeah, and it was like a pencil, and I would hurt my eye a little bit, like the eyelid. Anyway,
this is all like one of the people in Renaissance mentioned. This is puberty a second time.
Yeah, exactly.
On a lot of levels. My body's dealing with hormones it's never had to deal with.
Right.
Doesn't know what to do with them.
Yeah.
I don't know what shape my face is.
Yeah.
I don't know how to put on makeup properly to enhance that.
Yeah.
I don't know how to deal with eyebrows.
Yeah.
And now all of a sudden I have to shave everything?
Yeah.
And all these things that I've never...
And some
I
people
don't have to, but.
Some people go to other people who are well versed in this sort of thing. Like I heard from one trans woman that she would go to somebody who was kind of an expert who makes it her job to help people, to help trans women in particular, to look how they want to look, in terms of clothing and makeup and hair and that sort of thing. So there's that option too. I think it's a little bit expensive though.
Right.
Doing that, yeah.
And I think part of the journey is discovering it for yourself.
Yeah.
I mean, it's not like puberty in that I don't have to worry about love and romance and peer pressure because I don't suffer from any of that anymore.
Yeah, there's, and like any change, there's some awkwardness, and so, you just have to be patient with yourself as well, because it is a big change.
Even today, there's one of the people in Renaissance is having a pool party, a trans pool party, and I went to one of them with the idea of, oh God, I'm going to be in a bathing suit in front of people for the first time, and I don't know what I'm going to do. Oh my God, what am I going to do?
Yeah.
Showed up. I was late. Pinball tournament. Bit the bullet. Stepped out in my bikini. Got in the water.
Yeah.
And I regret I can't be there today.
Yeah. I love it that your club is very social. It's beyond just being a pure support, like therapy. And that you actually have social activities, because that's so important. It's so, I hate to use this word, but normal, right? It's what people do in their lives. You go swimming.
It kind of started. One of the women in the group and I were chit-chatting, and we were talking about meeting up for the first time and having a drink or something.
Yeah.
And we ended up setting up a time to play board games at a place in Manchester.
Yeah.
And then we included everybody.
Yeah.
And now it's 2 nights a month. There's one on a Sunday and one on a Friday every month. And people are openly invited to show on up and have fun and meet everybody else. And some of these people are Facebook friends now. And we talk about each other's lives and help each other. They're friends.
Yeah. Yeah. So take heart, people out there. If you are on an online community, see if you can have some in-person experiences.
Absolutely.
If you're a shy person that has trouble going to things, make your own event. People will come to it. You know, maybe get somebody who's a little bit more, outward, whatever.
There was a hiking meeting last week at one point.
There you go.
There's been, I think for a while on Saturday afternoons, they were having pizza in a park in Dover at noon every Sunday just to hang out.
Go out to brunch or something.
There's actually a drag brunch in Portsmouth.
Yeah.
I haven't made it there, but it's supposed to be fantastic.
Yeah.
And they're great people, and it's a place I go anyway.
Yeah, yeah. Or, if you're somebody who is religious, go out to, and if you know of other trans people who are religious, who are looking for an affirming church, go there. That's important to some people.
It doesn't matter where you find your solace, as long as you're looking for it and trying. There's people out there who, I think the hardest thing for me to get over right before I transitioned was, I'm not unique in this. I am not alone in this. I'm not the only one. I have felt isolated and alone all my life, and I'm not. And neither is anybody else who's going through this. Somebody feels the way you do, I promise.
Yeah. And there are, other trans people who are where you're at too, where they've transitioned later in life, There's
a lot of them in Renaissance.
Yeah. Yeah. So that sounds great. What was the other one? You said that there were a couple that you were involved in.
I don't even remember the names. I jump
in them. Is this more of like an online group?
Online, yeah. That one is. The other one is.
I'm so glad that you have an in-person one, though, because I think that's really important, actually just doing things together rather than just type.
It's been both. And when COVID was strong, they were doing monthly online meetings. We Zoomed, and there were 16 of us on a screen and chit-chatting, and everybody's having a drink. And
yeah. I actually don't like those at all. I went to a couple of them, and part of it was a technology issue. I couldn't really get through as well. People couldn't hear me, et cetera. It just wasn't a good kind of thing for me. But also, I feel a little disembodied. I really do.
It is a little weird.
Yeah.
I get it.
I don't.
But it was better than nothing, because at that point,
sure.
nobody was open. You weren't going anywhere.
Sure.
So
I actually did a lot of activism during the peak of COVID, or when they were, before they came out with a lot of the vaccinations. And I felt kind of lucky doing that because I got lots of contact, actually. Yeah.
I did a lot of board gaming.
Okay.
There's a store in town that had you could go online, order what you wanted, pay by card, then they'll put it in a box out back. You arrive, text them, they put it in the box, completely contactless delivery. They had a delivery box out back. You go out, grab your game, go home. So I built up quite a collection of tabletop games. It's my other thing besides pinball.
Okay. Yeah, like what kind of games?
Terraforming Mars is a big one for me. I love.
I'm just thinking of the ones. I'm thinking of the ones I played when I was a kid, like Monopoly and.
Yeah. No, these are more.
Sound more sophisticated.
A little more detailed. I wouldn't say sophisticated.
Sure.
Wingspan's a great one. You basically play birds.
Candyland.
Shoots and ladders.
Shoots and ladders, right.
What was the one you had like a bucket and you had to fill it with cherries?
Oh, I don't know. I don't know that one.
I don't either. But
I had a little friend that we would play Monopoly all the time, and we would pretend we were making little hors d'oeuvres. Like we'd raid our mother's pantries, and which was sacred ground, by the way. That was sacred ground.
Oh, yeah.
But we would sneak in there, and we would get like little. This was Alaska. This was above the Arctic Circle, and so all we had was like little canned things or crackers or something, and so we would make like little canapes from crackers, like saltines, with those little smoked oysters. Those little cans and stuff, and yeah, it was fun. It was fun, and we'd pummel each other with capitalism and. Monopoly. Yeah. That's the thing, right? Go to jail or you become the rich one.
Yeah. Except the rich one never goes to jail. And at least they're out in a heartbeat.
It's such a weird game. Like you send people to jail, you take away their money, you impoverish them with high rents.
It's just like life.
It's such a weird
And yet
game.
the game of life is absolutely nothing like life.
Yeah. I also really liked Backgammon, and I liked Scrabble. Scrabble's my favorite.
Played a decent amount of both of them.
Yeah, I love Scrabble. Yeah. I beat a friend of mine who is a writer in it once. We didn't play that often, but, we played like...
Well, not after you beat him.
Yeah. Oh, no. Oh, and I was just gloating afterwards because, he thought of himself as, I think...
Wordsmith.
Higher than me in some ways. Yeah. So I was so happy to beat him. Anyway, so we're kind of at the end here.
Yeah.
Thank you for talking with me today. It's so nice coming to these various communities and kind of discovering what New England is about, because I really haven't spent that much time here, except when I was at Harvard. But when you're at Harvard, you're pretty much just at Harvard, unless you're doing some sort of externship or something. Yeah, so it's lovely coming to a little seaside town here that I would probably never reach. It's interesting talking to somebody who is transitioning older in life and what the stresses are about that, and you've expressed some anxiety, and I think that's pretty common. It's pretty common. Yeah.
I know.
It'll just take a while to work that out.
I know clothes shopping is just now all of a sudden impossible.
Yeah.
I don't know what size, because none of them are the same.
Yes.
I bought a double XL shirt from a company. It fits me like a men's medium, which is, not meant to be a crop top, but is kind of for me.
Yeah. You just have to find probably the brands that work for you. Like, I have to do that too, because I'm kind of on the opposite end, right? Like, I'm really small and I'm kind of wide. So there's just not a lot of clothing that's made,
It's hard to do.
It's made for much larger men because this is ready to wear stuff. So they're looking at, men who are 5'10", 6 feet tall. I'm 5'2", right? So all my pants, they're always rolled up. Yeah, they're always rolled up. And, the sleeves, I always have to worry about that. Like, they're too long. Right. And if I wear clothing that is too big on me, it makes me feel bad about myself, actually.
I get it.
Yeah.
If it doesn't fit right, you don't feel right. You don't feel right. You don't.
I feel like I'm wearing dad's clothing or something. It doesn't feel like I'm an adult,
I know a lot of time when I'm getting ready to go out somewhere, I'll try on 3 or 4 outfits. Like, oh God, no, this looks fat. And I'm like, who the fuck are you? That's not who you are. But I want to. I told myself as I came to this that even though I break it all the time, like right now, I don't mind not passing.
Yeah.
I will not be ridiculous. And I realize that right now I do look ridiculous, but I've also come to the fact that I don't give a damn. This is me.
Yeah.
I don't expect you to.
Well, I don't think you look ridiculous.
Well,
I think you look like somebody who's early in transition, who maybe transitioned late in life,
and
which
doesn't have a clue how to put on makeup.
Well, I mean that's your reality. That's your reality. There are some trans groups online that are about being trans and being curvy, being heavier.
Oh, I'm never going to be petite.
Yeah. I really love those groups. Trans women in particular will display photos of themselves, and they will describe what they're wearing, and it's really great. I think it's really, this is an overused word, but pretty empowering, looking cute and feeling confident with the body that you have and the clothes that you find stylish.
I think just brazening it through and having that confidence is, nobody has it to start, I don't think. You got it from somewhere.
Yeah.
And if you can take it from one aspect of your life and move it into others, when I'm working, I'm very confident in what I do. Yeah.
And this looks like kind of like a fine dining kind of place. Yeah.
We are.
It's like a small restaurant. Yeah.
We're a scratch kitchen. Yeah. We care. We have I wouldn't say an older staff, but nobody on our staff is under 25. So we're all past that. Staff. It's really cool to be a cook.
Sure.
We're past that.
Sure.
We do good food. Our exec, he listens and he talks, and it's a good gig. The owners are good.
That's a good way to put it. That you take the confidence you have in one part of your life and use the lessons from that to apply it to other parts of your life. I think that's a really good lesson. I myself have to think about that sometimes. Like, I'm a really, really good math instructor for adults. and I'm also very good at knowing aspects of natural history. Like I can look at a landscape and figure out why it looks that way. I'm also a really fantastic baker, and I can't do it commercially because it's very hard work. But if I bring those two places, that sort of confidence, to other places where I feel less confident, I feel like that would bolster me.
It does,
Yeah,
I think.
yeah.
Even if you can draw an analogy about, this part of my life that I'm not so confident in, this little facet of it's just like what I do over here, and I'm really good at that, so I should be really good at this too.
Yeah, yeah. I think that's what people do with religion, as well as their feelings about certain kinds of art, like poetry, for instance. I once did a protest that was very difficult for me, personally difficult, and it was around being trans. And before I went out to do it, I actually read poetry, and I kept the poetry book with me when I was doing the protest, because I wanted something to kind of hold on to, not as like security blanket, but the feelings that gave me, what I wanted to hold on to, the strength that it gave me. And so everybody has that too.
It's kind of funny
Everybody
you mention
has
that. About 6 months ago, I was going to one of my first tournaments as a woman, and I was hanging out
For
with a couple
pinball?
friends.
Okay.
And
Can you show that more clearly, by the way?
it's kind of a lobstery
Pretty
thing.
cool. Yeah.
And she said, "Wait a second, I got this for you." And she came down and she gave me this very simple silver bracelet, and on the inside it said, "You fucking got this." And I wore it, and I felt so good.
Yeah.
It was bolstering. It was a security blanket
Yeah,
to some
yeah,
degree.
yeah.
And I wore it a couple times, and then I called her, and I'm like, "This wasn't is this a gift or a loan? I want to return it." And she said, "Look, it was a gift to me from my sister after my father died.
Cool.
And I had to do all the details. I don't need it back, but if you get to a point where you don't want to wear it, please give it back."
Yeah.
I gave it back to her the next time I saw her, and figured I will find my own inspirational jewelry.
Yeah, I've kind of done that with things too, like given something to somebody. I haven't asked for it back, but I've said, "Oh, if you no longer need that, could you pass it along to somebody who does need
Right.
it?" Yeah.
Well, it turned into this thing. I was telling this very story to another female cook, and she said, "Oh my God, I have it for you!" And she took a crystal off her necklace, and I mounted it on my work earrings.
Okay.
And I wear it, except on my days off. And as soon as I find a piece, she gets that one back too, because
Okay.
you know. And I think I hope I can give something to somebody someday
Yeah.
that helps them, even if it's just a talisman to get them through tomorrow
Sure.
at work or something.
Sure. Your being an open and visible trans person, I'm sure, helps some people.
I hope it does.
Yeah, just like you saw the trans people in downtown Portsmouth that one day. You know, not everybody can be out, but some people who are out, you know, show what's possible. You know, that you can work and you can be okay, and you can, maybe you're awkward, but you know, you're doing what you're doing, so you must have some confidence in it.
Working on it.
Yeah,
Every day.
Yep. It's something that you grow, right? It's not automatic. And I think that's a good place to end right now for today. You know, we had a couple sore spots in this, but I think that's okay. And there was some ambient noise that was super annoying to me. But at least this was indoors. There's been a lot of challenges with insects, like I said, and, you know, all kinds of, like, children, you know, doing their thing in the park. You know, that's how it is. Everybody's using the park. Yeah, so thank you for talking with me.
My
It's so
pleasure.
interesting to hear about, like, these clubs that you're involved with, the Renaissance Club, and then also the pinball.
The Belles and Chimes.
Belles and Chimes.
They're worldwide.
Wonderful.
Wherever you live, take a look. There could be
Yeah.
a chapter in your area.
Yeah.
And they've been so supportive and accepting. I can't say enough good things about the Belles and
Yeah.
Chimes as a group. I'm actually working on a New Hampshire chapter of Belles and Chimes with
Oh.
a girlfriend who plays.
Oh, awesome.
Yeah.
Yeah, see? There we go. Trans Women is starting a women's group about pinball. That's awesome.
We're there.
Yeah. Anyway, thank you so much again.
My pleasure. Thank
yeah.
you.
Thank you. See you next time, everybody.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.